Good morning, everyone. State Representative Tracy Ehlert coming at you from the Iowa House. I have my Clerk Truley with me today. If you joined us last week, you heard us talk about the journey that a bill goes through in the Iowa House. And today we're going to talk about how I, as a legislator in the Iowa House, become informed about a bill. I often have people ask me, how do you find out all the information about the bills? Or sometimes they're surprised when I don't know about a bill, which happens a lot when constituents email me. And so I'll kind of be talking through those processes. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And let's get on the slides. Move this over. Okay. So as you can see on the screen here, there are currently, this changes, there's currently 27 standing committees in the Iowa House. You can see them all listed right here. These are the committees that meet during the legislative session. There's also other committees and councils that meet during the interim or throughout the year. And I currently sit on these ones in blue that have the asterisks next to them. So I sit on Education, Human Resources, Labor, and Economic Development Appropriations Subcommittee.
So how many committees do most legislators sit on?
So in the past, I've personally sat on 5. This year, I'm on 4. And that changes year to year. Typically, I will see legislators sit on anywhere from usually 2 to 5. And due to the scheduling of when the committees meet, how much of a workload there's on the committees, and how many legislators are in each party, the minority and majority, and how many legislators can sit on the committees, it's really not feasible to be on it any more than that because the committees would either overlap or you just would not be able to keep up with the bills going through on your committee.
So with so many committees and so many bills running through the House and Senate, how do you learn about all the bills?
So since I don't sit on every committee, and since there's so many that do run through the committees, through the House, because you have to realize there's also the Senate too, and they have the same process and work in a similar fashion. I rely on a variety of methods to help educate me on the bills. So constituents are usually the first to notify me about bills that are not ran through the committees that I personally sit on. This is why hearing from constituents is so important because you really get really involved in the committees that you're on. And sometimes, like this week during Funnel Week, where we're really, really busy, you don't always get a chance to step out of your committee work and really learn what's going on in the other committees. I also rely on news sources. So I have various news subscriptions to the different papers, listen to, Iowa Public Radio in the morning, because often I will hear about hot topic bills that the news is addressing. And then that kind of flags me like, hey, that's not one on my committee, but if the news is talking about it, I probably have some constituents that are interested in it, and I should probably find out a little bit more about it. There's also, this looks a little different this year with COVID, but the Day on the Hill events and lobbyists, they're still taking place, but a lot of our Day on the Hill events right now are virtual. So not quite as fun. Usually we get a host of people from the different organizations here, and they'll bring different displays and stuff and talk to us, but they're really the best advocates and the experts on these issues, and can really share information about the bills that I may not have learned otherwise. In this photo here, I believe if I'm remembering right, this was from the pharmacy program on one of the days on the Hills, and they were telling me about different bills that they would like to see go through and why, and they could give the firsthand expert information on those as being part of the pharmacy program. There's also the different forum events during legislative session. We're very busy and active at different forums. League of Women Voters Forum is always an amazing forum that's put on, and we get asked a whole host of questions. And sometimes those questions are the first time I'm hearing about particular bills. So I can jot those down and after the forums, learn more about them. And most of the Lynn County area legislators, we all sit on a variety of different committees. So sometimes I get caught up on different bills when my colleagues share about the work on their committees, since they sit on committees that I don't sit on. And we also throughout, the session work with each other and reach out to people on different committees as well. And I'll reach out to my colleagues that are experts in different areas, as well as the sponsor of the bills. You can always reach out to the sponsors of the bills to find out more. Sometimes they're writing a bill that they really do have a vast amount of knowledge on, and sometimes their name's just on it because somebody wanted a bill ran and they were the ones that ran it for them. So different opportunities there. Along with the forums, there's also different meetings being held throughout the year, particularly once the session starts. They'll at the meetings tell us, I really would love to see this bill passed for A, B, and C reasons, or this is really going to hurt our organization for these reasons. And so you can hear firsthand from the workforce in different organizations that it may affect. If you listened to us last week, you may have recall me talking about subcommittees and how this is one of the most important times of legislation going through, because you really get all the interested parties there at once, along with sometimes the sponsors of the bills. And you can really get an in-depth knowledge on that bill and learn a lot more. And it's a chance for you to ask questions directly from everyone that's there and really learn both sides of the bill and why people are supporting it, and maybe some of the unintended consequences and why people are against it, or sometimes it's just neutral. So this is a great chance to learn more about it. Once the bill then goes to committee, if you were assigned the subcommittee for the bill, then you basically need to become the expert on that bill and continue learning more about it so that you can help guide your committee on how they should vote for that bill. If you were not assigned to the subcommittee for that bill, then you would have a fellow committee caucus member that was, and they would be the expert and do the same thing for you and help guide you on how to vote for it. And becoming that expert on the bill means that you really need to learn both sides of the argument so that you're presenting all the correct information to your fellow caucus committee members. Our staff, you heard me talk about staff and LSA on last week's Lunch and Learn. They're a great resource to learn about more about the bills. Also, LSA can get us fiscal information, let us know how much a certain piece of legislation is going to cost the state. And staff, as I showed last week, we have staff that are assigned to each committee. So they're also really good resources to go to if we have more questions about particular pieces of legislation. And then caucus, we have our committee caucus. So we're right here, I think this was Education Committee Caucus last year. So when you vote on bills in committee, each party will go to caucus before they vote and kind of discuss. This is where each person that was assigned to the subcommittee will educate their fellow committee caucus members on the bill, and you'll work as your committee caucus and decide how you're going to vote before you go back to committee for a full committee and vote on the bills. So this is another chance to learn about them. Often legislation has went through year after year after year. Either somebody is trying to get it through and it hasn't passed yet, or they continue to work on previous bills. So when you have committee members that have been here for quite a few years, they can also offer insight on that legislation as well, and as they may have voted on something very similar or the same thing in the past. And then we also have full caucus, where all of our caucus members will meet together before we do a full floor debate, and we will talk about how we're going to vote on the bills. And so it's another chance for the full caucus. Maybe people that don't sit on education committee don't understand why this bill really is good that we're trying to tell them to vote yes on. And so they can ask the members of the education committee or whatever committee it might end up being, ask them more about the bill. And so then that sometimes it depending on how the session's going and how busy you are, and if constituents aren't writing you about certain bills, your full committee or your full caucus before you go to floor debate sometimes is the first time that I ever hear about a bill, especially agriculture bills. Agriculture bills are not my area of expertise by any means, and I rarely have anybody writing me about agriculture. A little bit with CAFOs every once in a while, as I'm sure you've seen, Truly, those emails come through. But the House district that I represent just doesn't have a lot of farmers or anything in it. So agriculture bills, I'm usually finding out about in caucus. And so I can ask questions at that point and learn more if I haven't already done so up until that. And then, that leaves us at floor debates. A lot of people don't realize all the different steps a piece of legislation goes through before we actually debate on it. And because the bill goes through the subcommittee and the committee first and gets discussed at and debated at those different levels, most legislators already know how they're going to vote prior to debate. So the thoughts that we share during debate are more for those that are listening online, so that we can share more about the bill and give some more education on the bill. It's not always necessarily to convince our colleagues across the aisle, or sometimes even our own caucus members, to vote one way or the other, because you usually know by the time you go out on the floor how you're going to vote, because you've already had to make that decision. So Truly, any questions? That's basically how I stay informed.
How many, like any given session, how many bills can pass through? Like, what's a normal number of bills to see in session?
So
does it vary?
It does vary, and I keep trying to get an exact number. I've been trying to track down this information for a while because I wanted to do these lunch and learns last year, and then COVID, ruined that. And the count that we had when we were looking last year, there was over 2,000 pieces of legislation introduced in the House. Now, as you have probably seen, I've wrote quite a few that have not even made it to subcommittee. So this doesn't mean that all of these come to your committee, but there's that many that are introduced and written. And then, we have the House study bills, the House files, the House resolutions. And then think about all the amendments. We talked a lot about amendments last week. So you have to familiarize yourself with amendments if they're going to go on to bills that you have running through your committees, which can greatly change the bill. So there are lots and lots and lots of pieces of legislation. And then, once we go through funnel week, which we're in right now, then we have to start becoming familiar with some of the things over in the Senate, because then we'll start voting on those in the House. So I do have a lot of constituents that write me about Senate bills, and I really have to do a lot of research on those, because I don't see those until somebody, writes me about them, because I'm focused on what's going on in the House. And I honestly, unless a constituent reaches out to me about a Senate file, I don't always look into them too deep, because they may or may not end up making their way over to the House. So you really need to focus on what's going on in the House and making sure that the bills that you're responsible for educating your committee on and educating your caucus members on. So it's you get in this mind frame of where you want to know and learn about all of it, but it's just not possible, especially with 27 committees and hundreds of bills going through each committee. So you just need to know where you can go to reach out. And then I'm going to stop sharing this screen and try to share my email. Let's see. We also get these nice emails, as I'm sure you see these in my email box all the time, Truly, all these ones labeled bills. But we get these nice bill packets where when bills are introduced, they're emailed to us and we can click on this link. And I don't know if it will show up. Sometimes PDFs don't show up on the screen. Can you see that or not, Truly? Or is it still my email?
It's still your email.
Still my
Yeah.
email. Okay, yes. For some reason, I can't get PDFs to show up, and I don't know if that's a Zoom thing or if I'm just doing something wrong.
I think it is a Zoom thing.
Okay. So we get these links emailed to us, and then it will show all the bills that were introduced for that day. So that's a way that we can at least kind of familiarize ourselves just by reading the short descriptions of the bills. But until you actually dig into them, it doesn't mean you really know anything about the bill, because the descriptions aren't always the greatest. It can sound good until you read it, and then it might have some bad stuff in there, or it really does, or it sounds exciting and it just ends up being like something to remove code clutter or something that's really not that exciting. So I can at least kind of scan through these each day when we get one of these emailed to us, but it doesn't give a ton of information. And of course, I need to focus on the bills that are assigned in my committee. Okay. Any other questions that you have, Truly, or you think our listeners would have?
How many emails a week do you get from constituents?
Oh, you would probably know that better than me. And this session is absolutely different than past, because with COVID and the derecho and the school voucher bill, the school voucher bill tends to be plugging up my email right now. But I am getting some days 300 emails a day, where that would typically be what I would maybe see on a week. And they're not all constituents, they're all Iowans. But I'm not getting near that many just from my own constituents, but you know, we're voting in the best interest of all Iowans. So it's still important to see everybody's view. But some people will send to every legislator, or some will send to every person on the committee. And sitting on both the Education Committee and Human Resources Committee, I tend to get a lot of those. I get CC'd on a lot of those emails. So yeah, my inbox is a little out of control this year, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, anything else?
I don't think I have any other questions. This has been very insightful.
And I think I tried to pull out any questions I found in email. So again, we'll continue to do these each week as we receive questions and topics to address. If you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out and contact me. We will see you next week. Have a great week. Bye.
I thought you were talking to your clerk or somebody else.